Most animals are born, grow, reproduce, and decline on a schedule measured in seasons. A mouse lives fast and disappears quietly. A deer matures within a year. Even large mammals complete most of their biological journey quickly. Humans do not. We spend years learning to walk, decades finishing development, and much of our life simply maintaining what already exists. This slowness is not an accident, and it is not a luxury. It is a cost. To grow old slowly, humans gave up speed, independence, and early strength. We traded rapid survival for something harder to measure. The question is not why we live longer. The question is why evolution allowed us to live so slowly at all. In the natural world, aging is not a philosophical idea. It is a biological schedule. For most animals, this schedule is short, direct, and efficient. Growth happens quickly, reproduction follows soon after, and decline arrives without delay. This pattern is not a flaw. It is the result of millions of years of selection favoring speed over durability. A mouse that matures in weeks can reproduce before predators, climate, or scarcity intervene. A rabbit that reaches adulthood in months does not need a long future to succeed. In this context, aging is not something to be resisted. It is simply the final phase of a life strategy built around rapid turnover. Humans, however, do not fit this pattern. From the moment of birth, the human body behaves as if time itself moves differently. Human infants are born neurologically unfinished, physically dependent, and incapable of survival without long-term care. Years pass before basic motor control stabilizes. Decades pass before the body reaches what other mammals would consider full maturity. This prolonged timeline is not limited to childhood. Human bones fuse slowly. The immune system continues adapting well into adulthood. Even the brain, the most energy-demanding organ we possess, keeps refining its internal connections far longer than in other species. Compared to most mammals of similar size, humans do not simply live longer, we develop longer. This distinction matters. Longevity can occur without slow aging. Some animals live long lives but mature quickly. Humans do not. Our entire biological rhythm is stretched. To understand why, it helps to return to the earlier stages of mammalian evolution. Mammals evolved under constant pressure. Predation, environmental instability, and limited resources rewarded species that could reproduce quickly and in large numbers. Slow development was dangerous. A long childhood meant vulnerability. In this evolutionary environment, aging slowly was rarely an advantage. The human lineage represents a rare deviation from this rule. Fossil evidence and comparative biology suggest that early hominins already showed signs of extended growth periods compared to other primates. Teeth erupted later. Skeletal maturation took longer. Brain volume increased not only in size, but in the time required to reach functional maturity. These changes did not appear all at once. They accumulated gradually, generation by generation, each extension of developmental time carrying a cost. A slower growing body requires more food over a longer period. A dependent child requires social structures capable of sustained care. A long lifespan increases exposure to injury, disease, and environmental change. None of these are trivial disadvantages. Evolution does not preserve inefficiency without reason. The reason, in this case, was not lifespan itself. It was information. A slowly developing brain can absorb, store, and refine complex patterns over time. Skills that require years to master cannot emerge in bodies designed for speed. Memory, social learning, and cumulative knowledge depend on extended developmental windows. In humans, aging slowly became inseparable from learning slowly and learning deeply. This does not mean humans were designed to live long for comfort or reflection. Early humans faced high mortality at all ages. Living past childhood was never guaranteed. What mattered was that those who survived carried bodies capable of maintaining function long enough for learned knowledge to matter. Aging slowly was not about extending the end of life. It was about stretching the middle. In this sense, human aging is less a delay of death and more a prolonged state of becoming. To grow old slowly meant remaining unfinished for much longer than any other animal. And that unfinished state would shape everything that followed. Slowing down the biological clock is never free. In evolution, every extension of time demands payment in energy, risk, or vulnerability. For most species, a long developmental period is a liability. A body that takes years to mature must be fed, protected, and maintained without contributing to reproduction. In environments shaped by scarcity and danger, this delay is often fatal. This is why slow aging is rare in nature. Humans are an exception not because the costs disappeared, but because those costs were redistributed. The first and most visible cost of slow aging is prolonged dependence. Human infants are born at a stage of development that would be non-viable in almost any other mammal. Their brains are large but unfinished, their motor systems unstable, and their immune defenses immature. This is not a flaw of design. It is the consequence of a body that cannot complete development inside the womb without risking the mother's survival. The human pelvis, reshaped for upright walking, limited the size of the birth canal. The brain continued to grow, but birth had to occur earlier. As a result, human development shifted outward into the social environment. Growth that other animals complete alone is, in humans, distributed across years of care. This arrangement increased survival only because early humans lived in groups capable of sharing food and protection. Without social buffering, slow aging would have been eliminated by selection. Energy is the second cost. A slow-growing body consumes resources continuously without producing immediate reproductive returns. The human brain alone uses a significant portion of daily energy intake, especially during childhood. Maintaining neural plasticity, repairing cellular damage, and sustaining long-term physiological stability requires constant metabolic investment. In animals that live fast, energy is allocated toward rapid growth and early reproduction. In humans, energy is redirected toward maintenance and learning. This shift makes sense only if the knowledge acquired during that extended period improves survival or reproduction later on. Otherwise, the energy cost would outweigh the benefit. Risk is the third cost, and perhaps the most underestimated. A long lifespan increases exposure. More years alive mean more chances to encounter disease, injury, famine, or environmental change. A species that ages slowly must maintain functional integrity for decades under uncertain conditions. This requires cellular repair mechanisms, immune flexibility, and behavioral adaptability. Humans developed all three, but none perfectly. Aging still occurs. Damage still accumulates. What changed was the rate. Instead of a rapid decline after reproduction, the human body enters a long plateau of relative stability. This plateau is fragile. It depends on nutrition, social support, and accumulated experience. In early human environments, individuals who survived into later adulthood often became repositories of memory. They knew where water remained during dry seasons, how animals migrated, and which plants were safe to eat. Their slow aging allowed this information to remain available long enough to matter. But this benefit existed only because others supported them earlier in life. Slow aging thus created a delayed reciprocity across generations. The young were protected while learning, and the old were valued for what they remembered. This arrangement was not guaranteed. Many individuals never reached old age. What persisted was not universal longevity, but the biological capacity for it. Humans did not evolve to avoid death. They evolved to postpone decline long enough for knowledge to accumulate and circulate. Slow aging, then, is not simply a physiological trait. It is a structural commitment. Once evolution extended the developmental timeline, It had to reinforce social bonds, learning capacity, and long-term maintenance. Each layer depended on the others. Remove social care, and slow aging becomes lethal. Remove learning, and extended development becomes wasteful. The human body carries all of these dependencies at once. To age slowly is to live within a system that must hold together for decades. That system began forming long before written history, embedded in bones, brains, and shared survival. If slow aging were only a burden, it would not have survived. What allowed this unusual biological rhythm to persist was the emergence of a system that could convert time into advantage. In humans, that system was the brain, not merely as an organ of reaction, but as a structure designed to change slowly. Unlike most mammals, the human brain remains plastic for an extended period. Neural connections form, weaken, and reorganize across decades. This prolonged plasticity is inseparable from slow aging. A body that declines too quickly cannot support a brain that learns slowly. Memory requires stability. Skills require repetition. Social understanding requires years of observation. In this sense, human aging did not slow down so that life could be longer. It slowed down so that information could last. Early in human evolution, survival increasingly depended on behaviors that could not be encoded purely by instinct. Tool-making techniques improved over generations. Hunting strategies adapted to local environments. Social norms regulated cooperation and reduced internal conflict. None of these advantages could be fully inherited genetically. They had to be learned. A short lifespan would erase this knowledge too quickly. Slow aging extended the window during which learned information could be applied, shared, and refined. This did not eliminate mortality. It changed the distribution of value across time. The brain's extended development also reshaped how humans experienced maturity. In many animals, adulthood begins once the body is capable of reproduction. In humans, reproductive ability arrives long before full cognitive maturity. This mismatch created a long middle phase of life in which individuals were biologically adult but still refining judgment, memory, and social reasoning. This phase became the core of human contribution. It was when individuals learned not just how to survive, but how to coordinate survival with others. Aging slowly kept this phase intact. It delayed the onset of decline just enough for experience to compound. Importantly, this process was not conscious. Early humans did not decide to value wisdom. Evolution selected bodies that could carry experience longer, because those bodies indirectly improved group survival. An older individual who remembered a distant water source or a seasonal pattern increased the survival odds of younger relatives. Even when reproduction had ended, the body remained useful. This challenged a basic evolutionary assumption that life after reproduction had little value. In humans, post-reproductive life became a stabilizing force, not a biological error. This does not mean human aging is gentle. Cellular damage still accumulates. Muscles weaken. Reaction times slow. What changed was not the presence of aging, but its tempo. The human body resists rapid collapse. Repair mechanisms remain active. Cognitive decline, while real, is delayed compared to many mammals. These features are costly to maintain, but they protect the continuity of memory within a group. Slow aging allowed knowledge to persist across generations without being written down. Before language was fixed, before symbols existed, the living brain was the archive. To lose elders too quickly would have meant cultural amnesia. From this perspective, human aging is less about the individual and more about the system they inhabit. A slowly aging body supports a slowly changing culture. Each generation inherits not only genes, but stabilized behaviors shaped by those who lived long enough to remember consequences. The human lifespan expanded not to escape death, but to give meaning to learning. Time became the medium through which experience gained weight. Aging slowed because forgetting became dangerous. And once memory mattered, the body had to endure long enough to carry it. When comparing humans to other animals, the difference in aging becomes most visible not at the end of life, but at the beginning. In many species, the transition from birth to functional adulthood is rapid and decisive. A foal stands within hours. A chimpanzee reaches physical independence within a few years. Even large mammals complete skeletal growth and reproductive readiness relatively quickly. Their bodies are organized around a clear priority: become functional before the environment intervenes. Aging, in these cases, begins almost immediately after maturity. Growth peaks early, and decline follows soon after reproductive success is secured. Humans diverge sharply from this pattern. Physical growth alone occupies a much longer span. Bones continue lengthening into the late teenage years, and full skeletal maturation often extends into the 20s. Muscle strength, cardiovascular efficiency, and hormonal stability do not reach their long-term plateau until well after reproductive capability begins. This creates a long overlap between growth and maintenance, a feature rare among mammals. The human body does not rush to a peak. It approaches it gradually, then sustains it. This slow ascent is a prerequisite for slow descent. The brain amplifies this difference. In most mammals, brain development follows a compressed timeline. Neural circuits essential for survival are established early, and plasticity declines quickly once independence is achieved. In humans, neural development remains open-ended. Synaptic pruning, myelination, and network integration continue for decades. Cognitive control, long-term planning, and emotional regulation mature slowly. This means that what humans consider adulthood is not a single biological event. Compared to other animals, humans spend an unusually large proportion of their lives in a state of refinement rather than completion. This extended refinement delays aging by shifting the body's priorities. Instead of maximizing early output, the human organism invests in durability. Cellular repair mechanisms remain active. Hormonal systems avoid extreme peaks and crashes. Even reproduction is spread across a wide window rather than concentrated in a brief phase. In many animals, reproduction accelerates aging. Energy diverted to reproduction reduces investment in maintenance. Humans experience this trade-off differently. Reproduction does not immediately trigger decline. The body continues to allocate resources toward long-term stability, allowing individuals to remain functional for years after their first offspring are born. Decline, when it arrives, is gradual. Muscular strength decreases slowly. Cognitive changes accumulate subtly. This contrasts with species that experience rapid senescence shortly after reproductive maturity. The human trajectory looks less like a steep hill and more like a long plateau. Importantly, this plateau is not guaranteed. It is conditional. Nutrition, social support, and reduced extrinsic mortality all influence whether slow aging can be expressed. In harsh environments, human aging accelerates. The capacity for slow aging exists, but it is not always realized. This distinction helps explain why early human populations did not commonly experience old age, even though the biological potential was present. Compared to other animals, humans did not evolve to avoid death from external causes. They evolved to age slowly when external threats were reduced. This capacity differentiates humans from even closely related primates. While chimpanzees and bonobos show some extended development, their aging accelerates earlier, and post-reproductive survival is limited. Humans pushed this boundary further. They extended not only childhood, but adulthood itself. This extension reshaped the entire life course. Growth, reproduction, maintenance, and decline became overlapping processes rather than sequential stages. Aging slowed because the body was never fully finished growing, nor fully committed to decline. Understanding this comparison clarifies an essential point. Humans did not simply add years to life, they redistributed time across life. Animals with short lifespans offer the clearest contrast to human aging. Their lives are shaped by urgency. Small mammals such as rodents, many birds, and numerous insects compress growth, reproduction, and decline into a narrow window of time. Their bodies are optimized for speed. Metabolism runs high, cells divide rapidly. Tissues prioritize immediate performance over long-term preservation. In these organisms, aging is not a slow accumulation of subtle changes. It is a swift unraveling once peak function passes. This strategy works because it aligns with environmental reality. When predation is intense and survival uncertain, investing in long-term maintenance provides little return. Reproduce early, reproduce often, and accept rapid decline. Humans represent the opposite end of this spectrum. Our metabolism is comparatively slower. Growth is spread across many years. Cellular repair mechanisms remain active far beyond reproductive maturity. This does not mean humans avoid biological trade-offs. It means the trade-offs are deferred. Instead of burning energy quickly, the human body budgets it carefully across decades. This budgeting reduces early output but preserves function. In short-lived animals, reproduction accelerates aging. Energy diverted to producing offspring reduces investment in repair. Hormonal surges promote growth and fertility at the cost of cellular stability. Once reproduction peaks, decline accelerates. In humans, reproduction is less disruptive. Fertility spans many years, and the physiological demands of reproduction do not immediately overwhelm maintenance systems. This allows the body to continue repairing damage and sustaining function. Aging still progresses, but its pace remains controlled. The difference is not one of intent, but of design shaped by evolutionary pressures. Another key distinction lies in how damage is tolerated. In short-lived species, cellular damage accumulates rapidly because there is little evolutionary incentive to prevent it. If an organism rarely survives long enough for damage to matter, repairing it is wasteful. In humans, damage matters because the body is expected to function for much longer. Mechanisms such as DNA repair, protein recycling, and immune surveillance are more active. They are not perfect, but they slow deterioration. This does not make humans immune to aging. It makes aging gradual. The environment further amplifies these differences. Short-lived animals often inhabit unstable niches. Seasonal scarcity, high predation, and rapid population turnover favor fast life histories. Humans increasingly altered their environments. Through tools, fire, and social cooperation, early humans reduced external mortality. Fewer individuals died young from predation or exposure. This shift changed the balance of selection. When more individuals survive past reproduction, traits that preserve function later in life gain importance. Slow aging becomes visible only under these conditions. Without environmental buffering, human aging would appear much faster. It is also important to recognize that slow aging introduces its own vulnerabilities. A long-lived body accumulates more damage over time. Chronic diseases, degenerative conditions, and cognitive decline become possible only because survival is extended. Short-lived animals avoid these problems not by resisting them, but by dying before they arise. Humans face them because they live long enough for gradual failures to matter. This is not a design flaw. It is the consequence of a strategy that favors endurance over speed. When comparing humans to fast-living animals, the contrast reveals a fundamental truth. Aging speed is not a universal clock. It is a reflection of how a species negotiates risk, energy, and time. Humans chose the long negotiation. Other animals chose the quick resolution. Neither is superior in isolation. Each fits the conditions under which it evolved. What makes humans distinct is not that we escape aging, but that we slow it enough for experience to accumulate. Long-lived animals provide a more subtle comparison. At first glance, species such as elephants, whales, and some large birds appear to share humanity's extended relationship with time. They mature more slowly than small mammals, reproduce over longer periods, and can survive for decades. Yet their aging follows a different logic. In most long-lived animals, slow aging is primarily a function of body size and metabolic rate. Large bodies lose heat more slowly, experience fewer predators, and operate at lower relative metabolic speeds. This reduces cellular wear. Longevity in these species is largely passive. Our body size alone does not justify our lifespan. Many mammals larger than humans age faster once maturity is reached. The key difference lies not in physical mass, but in how time is used. In elephants and whales, development leads toward physical competence. Once maturity is achieved, behavior remains relatively stable. Skills are refined, but not fundamentally reorganized. Cognitive flexibility exists, but learning does not remain open-ended throughout life. Aging in these species is delayed but linear. Humans display a different pattern. Even after physical maturity, the human brain continues reorganizing. Learning does not plateau early. Social roles shift repeatedly across the lifespan. An individual may contribute as a learner, a producer, a caretaker, and later as a memory holder. This layered contribution requires a body that resists rapid decline. Slow aging in humans is therefore active rather than passive. It supports ongoing cognitive and social adaptation rather than merely extending survival. Another distinction concerns reproduction. Many long-lived animals maintain reproductive capacity for much of their lifespan. Decline is often closely tied to reproductive exhaustion. In humans, reproduction ends relatively early, especially in females, yet life continues for decades afterward. This extended post-reproductive phase is rare in mammals. It suggests that survival beyond reproduction carries value independent of producing offspring. In evolutionary terms, this value emerges through kin support, knowledge transmission, and social stability. Slow aging preserves function during this phase, allowing individuals to contribute without reproducing. This further separates human aging from that of other long-lived species. Damage accumulation also differs. In large animals, slow aging is supported by robust cellular structures and reduced metabolic stress. In humans, aging is slowed through maintenance rather than resistance. Repair systems remain active. Behavioral flexibility reduces exposure to danger. Social cooperation compensates for physical decline. These strategies do not prevent aging, but they redistribute its effects across time. Humans become slower, not suddenly weak. This gradual change preserves participation in social life even as physical capacities diminish. Remove social structure and the advantage collapses. An isolated human does not age well. Without shared resources, accumulated knowledge loses its value. Long-lived animals often do not require complex social support to survive into old age. Humans do. This dependence reveals that slow aging in humans is inseparable from collective living. It is not a trait of the individual body alone. It is a property of the system in which that body exists. When humans are compared to other long-lived animals, the distinction becomes clear. Longevity can arise through size, metabolism, or environmental safety. Human longevity arises through time-bound learning and social memory. Aging slowed not because the body became indestructible, but because decline was postponed to protect accumulated experience. Humans did not evolve to outlast nature. They evolved to remain useful within it for as long as possible. Slow aging is therefore not simply about living longer than other animals. It is about remaining adaptable long after physical growth has ended. Slow aging cannot be understood by biology alone. It becomes visible only when the environment allows it to appear. In early human history, external dangers shaped survival more strongly than internal decline. Predation, exposure, injury, and infection ended most lives long before aging could unfold. Under these conditions, the human capacity to age slowly existed, but it remained largely hidden. What changed over time was not the human body itself, but the level of external risk it faced. As humans learned to modify their surroundings, the balance between internal aging and external death began to shift. The earliest tools marked a turning point. Simple stone implements extended physical capability without altering biology. Fire followed, reducing cold stress, improving nutrition, and lowering nighttime predation. Shelters created predictable spaces in an unpredictable landscape. Each of these changes reduced the likelihood of early death. None of them slowed cellular aging directly. What they did was allow more individuals to survive long enough for slow aging to matter. When fewer people died young, selection pressures changed. Traits that preserved function later in life became increasingly relevant. In environments where survival to midlife became more common, aging speed gained evolutionary weight. This process was gradual. It unfolded across thousands of generations. The human body did not suddenly age more slowly. Instead, the advantage of already slow aging became more consistently expressed. Environmental buffering revealed a latent capacity. Social organization amplified this effect. Cooperative foraging reduced starvation risk. Shared childcare allowed longer developmental periods. Collective defense reduced predation. These systems transformed survival from an individual struggle into a group-level process. As a result, the human lifespan stretched not at its end, but in its middle. More individuals reached adulthood, remained functional, and contributed for longer periods. Aging slowed, not because decline stopped, but because stability increased. It is important to distinguish this process from comfort. Early human environments remained harsh. Disease, injury, and violence were common. What changed was the distribution of risk. External threats became less random and more manageable. This predictability favored bodies that could maintain performance over time. A slow-aging organism benefits more from a stable environment than a fast-aging one. Humans gradually created such environments for themselves. This did not eliminate selection pressures, it redirected them. Once early death became less frequent, internal maintenance mattered more. Repair mechanisms, immune flexibility, and behavioral caution gained value. The human body already possessed these traits to some degree. Environmental change allowed them to be selected more consistently. Slow aging thus emerged not as a new invention, but as a revealed strategy. A key consequence of reduced external mortality is the extension of learning horizons. When individuals expect to survive longer, investing time in learning becomes adaptive. Skills that take years to acquire begin to pay off. Knowledge accumulates. Cultural transmission accelerates. Slow aging supports this feedback loop by preserving cognitive function across longer spans. Environment and biology reinforce each other. Reduced risk allows slow aging to express itself. Slow aging allows learning to compound. Together, they reshape the life course. This shift also introduced new vulnerabilities. As lives extended, chronic conditions and long-term decline became possible. These were not immediate evolutionary concerns in earlier environments. They emerged only when survival improved. In this sense, many modern problems of aging are side effects of success. They appear when the balance between external danger and internal deterioration tips toward longevity. Understanding this balance clarifies an essential point. Humans did not evolve to age slowly in isolation. Slow aging became meaningful only when humans learned to reduce the dangers that once made aging irrelevant. The environment did not change the clock, it made the clock worth reading. As external dangers became more manageable, another force began reshaping the pace of human aging. Social structure. Human survival gradually shifted from individual endurance to collective coordination. This shift did not merely protect lives, it altered how time itself functioned within the human life course. In social species, cooperation can reduce immediate risk. In humans, it went further. Cooperation extended dependency, delayed maturity, and redistributed effort across generations. These changes reinforced slow aging as a viable strategy. One of the most important social innovations was shared care. Human children require support far beyond what a single caregiver can provide. Food gathering, protection, and teaching were spread across kin and group members. This reduced the cost of prolonged development. A child could grow slowly without placing unbearable strain on any one individual. In turn, slow development allowed the brain to remain plastic for longer. Aging slowed, not because bodies changed rapidly, but because the social environment could absorb the delay. Division of labor further transformed aging. As human groups grew more complex, individuals no longer needed to perform all survival tasks equally. Physical strength mattered, but so did planning, memory, and coordination. Older individuals, even as their physical capacity declined, retained roles that relied on experience rather than speed. This functional flexibility reduced the penalty of aging. Decline no longer meant uselessness. A slowly aging body could remain valuable across changing roles. This social buffering reduced selection against late-life maintenance. Another critical factor was food sharing. In many animals, access to food is tightly linked to physical performance. Weakness leads quickly to starvation. Humans broke this link. Through sharing and storage, calories could flow toward those temporarily less productive. This decoupling allowed aging bodies to survive longer. It also rewarded long-term strategies. Individuals who contributed knowledge or social stability could be supported even when they were not the strongest hunters or gatherers. Slow aging became embedded in reciprocal exchange. Time was repaid later. Social memory amplified these effects. Humans began to rely not only on individual memory, but on collective memory maintained through elders. Stories, practices, and norms persisted because living individuals carried them. This made survival less dependent on immediate trial and error. Groups with longer-lived members retained successful strategies more reliably. Slow aging thus increased group-level resilience. Selection began favoring bodies that could sustain cognition and social participation over long spans. Importantly, these advantages were conditional. Social systems require stability. Cooperation can fail. Groups can fragment. When social support breaks down, slow aging becomes a liability again. Dependence increases vulnerability. This tension shaped human evolution. Biological, slow aging, and social complexity co-evolved, each reinforcing the other while remaining fragile. Neither could persist alone. From this perspective, human aging cannot be separated from human society. The pace at which bodies change reflects the pace at which relationships persist. A fast-aging organism fits a world of solitary survival. A slow-aging organism fits a world where time is shared. Humans increasingly inhabited the latter. Aging slowed because life became a long-term project rather than a short-term gamble. This did not remove hardship. It restructured it. Risks became spread across time and across people. Slow aging emerged as a strategy that only works when individuals are embedded in durable social networks. The human body adapted accordingly. It became less efficient in isolation, but more resilient within a group. To age slowly, humans learn to live together slowly as well. As social structures stabilized, culture began to exert its own influence on the pace of human aging. Culture, in this sense, does not mean art or ritual alone. It refers to the accumulation of learned behaviors, shared expectations, and transmitted knowledge that persist beyond a single lifetime. Once culture became a primary survival tool, the value of time changed. A longer life no longer served only the individual. It served continuity. Slow aging allowed cultural information to remain embodied, not just remembered abstractly. In early human groups, survival increasingly depended on knowledge that could not be rediscovered easily. Seasonal patterns, migration routes, tool-making sequences, and social norms all required long observation and repetition. These were not instincts. They were learned systems. A short-lived population would lose such information repeatedly. Slow aging reduced this loss. Individuals who lived longer became carriers of accumulated experience. Their presence reduced the need to relearn costly lessons. Culture, therefore, created a selective environment where extended functional life had tangible benefits. The transmission of knowledge also reshaped the meaning of age. In many animals, age beyond physical peak carries little adaptive value. In humans, age became associated with reliability. An older individual had survived multiple cycles of scarcity and abundance. This survival itself signaled competence. Groups that attended to such experience avoided repeated mistakes. Over time, this dynamic favored bodies that could preserve cognitive function long enough for experience to be shared. Aging slowed, not because decline vanished, but because memory remained useful. Language intensified this process. Once complex communication emerged, information could be stored not only in actions, but in shared narratives. Teaching became explicit. Skills could be transferred intentionally rather than implicitly. This increased the payoff of long lives. Knowledge accumulated faster when it could be passed down directly. Slow aging extended the teaching window. Individuals could instruct multiple generations, reinforcing continuity. Cultural inheritance began to complement genetic inheritance. The body had to remain functional long enough to support both. Importantly, culture also altered expectations of the future. In species without culture, the future beyond immediate reproduction holds little relevance. In humans, future planning became meaningful. Long-term projects emerged. Tool refinement, territory management, and social alliances unfolded over years or decades. A body that declined too quickly would undermine these strategies. Slow aging supported foresight. It allowed individuals to invest in outcomes they might live to see. This feedback loop reinforced delayed decline. Culture did not eliminate aging. It reshaped its consequences. An individual's contribution could shift from action to guidance. This flexibility reduced selection pressure against aging bodies. A slower decline preserved usefulness even as capacities changed. Over generations, this tolerance allowed slow aging traits to persist. Culture also introduced a new vulnerability. Knowledge can outpace biology. Cultural systems may demand stability longer than bodies can provide. This tension becomes visible in later stages of life, when decline limits participation. Yet this problem arises only because survival has been extended so far. It is a consequence of success rather than failure. Human aging slowed because life became a repository for more than genes. It became a vessel for memory, instruction, and shared meaning. The human lifespan expanded not to escape decay, but to preserve continuity in a world shaped increasingly by what was remembered. To understand why humans age slowly, but never stop aging, it is necessary to look inward at the body's internal systems of maintenance. Aging is not a single process. It is the combined result of countless small changes accumulating over time. Cells divide, proteins fold and unfold, DNA is copied, damaged, and repaired. In fast-aging organisms, these processes prioritize speed. In humans, they prioritize balance. The human body invests heavily in repair, but repair is never complete. It delays failure rather than preventing it. One of the central mechanisms behind slow aging is cellular maintenance. Human cells possess robust systems for detecting and repairing DNA damage. Errors that arise during replication can be corrected. Damaged proteins can be broken down and replaced. Cellular waste is recycled through complex pathways. These processes operate continuously, consuming energy and time. They do not eliminate damage. They reduce its pace. Evolution favored these systems because human bodies were expected to function for decades, not just years. Without them, slow aging would be impossible. Yet repair has limits. Every correction carries a cost, and no system operates with perfect accuracy. Over time, small errors escape detection. Repairs become less efficient. The cumulative effect is gradual decline. Another key factor is metabolic regulation. Humans maintain relatively stable internal conditions. Blood sugar, temperature, and hormonal levels are tightly controlled. Extreme fluctuations, while useful for rapid growth or reproduction, accelerate wear. Many short-lived animals experience dramatic metabolic surges that boost performance at the expense of longevity. Humans avoid these extremes. Our physiology favors moderation. This moderation slows aging by reducing stress on cells and tissues. It also constrains speed. Strength, growth, and reproduction unfold more slowly as a result. Immune function plays a similar role. The human immune system remains adaptable for much of life. It learns from exposure, refining responses rather than exhausting them early. This flexibility protects against infection over long spans. However, immune activity also contributes to aging. Chronic inflammation, even at low levels, gradually damages tissues. The immune system balances protection and wear. Slow aging emerges from this balance, not from the absence of damage. Hormonal systems further illustrate this trade-off. Growth hormones, sex hormones, and stress hormones shape development and maintenance. In humans, these systems shift gradually. Peaks are extended, declines are delayed. This smooth transition preserves function but cannot halt eventual change. When hormonal regulation falters, aging accelerates. The timing of these shifts is critical. Too early, and development is compromised. Too late, and maintenance systems are strained. Human aging reflects a carefully tuned compromise. Importantly, these internal systems evolved under conditions where external mortality had already been reduced. Repair mechanisms matter only if the organism survives long enough to use them. Once environmental risks declined, internal maintenance gained evolutionary significance. Selection favored bodies that could sustain themselves longer under moderate stress. This did not produce immortality. It produced resilience. Aging in humans is therefore not a failure of biology. It is the outcome of biology optimized for endurance, not permanence. The body was never designed to last forever. It was designed to last long enough. Slow aging reflects an emphasis on continuity rather than completion. Decline begins early, but it unfolds quietly. The human body remains functional not because damage is absent, but because it is managed. Understanding this reveals why aging can be slowed but never stopped. The systems that preserve life also generate wear. Repair itself produces byproducts. Balance requires compromise. Humans age slowly because evolution chose to invest in maintenance. We age inevitably because maintenance has a cost. The limits of slow aging become clearer when examined across biological levels. Aging does not begin in organs or systems. It begins at the smallest scale, within individual cells. Each cell must divide, maintain its internal structure, and communicate with its surroundings. Over time, these tasks become more difficult. Human cells are equipped with mechanisms to slow this process, but not to escape it. One of the most important constraints lies in cell division itself. Each time a cell divides, its genetic material must be copied. This process is remarkably accurate, yet never flawless. Protective structures at the ends of chromosomes shorten slightly with each division. This shortening acts as a biological counter, limiting how many times a cell can divide safely. In humans, this limit is relatively high, supporting long-term tissue maintenance. But it is not infinite. Eventually, cells reach a point where division becomes risky. They slow, malfunction, or stop altogether. This cellular hesitation protects against cancer, but it also reduces the body's ability to renew itself. Aging emerges from this protective restraint. At the tissue level, the consequences accumulate. Tissues depend on a balance between cell loss and cell replacement. In youth, replacement keeps pace. In adulthood, it slows. In later life, it falls behind. Muscle fibers repair more slowly. Skin renews less efficiently. Blood vessels stiffen as structural proteins degrade faster than they are replaced. None of these changes occur abruptly. They unfold gradually, reflecting the body's continued attempt to preserve function despite diminishing cellular capacity. Slow aging delays these effects, but it cannot prevent the imbalance from widening. Organs amplify these trends. Each organ relies on coordinated cellular activity. When enough cells within an organ lose efficiency, overall performance declines. The heart compensates by working harder. The kidneys filter more cautiously. The brain reroutes activity through alternative pathways. These compensations extend functional life. They also increase strain. Over time, compensatory mechanisms themselves become sources of stress. The organ survives by adapting, but adaptation carries a cost. Aging at this level reflects a series of adjustments rather than a single failure. Importantly, these processes interact. Cellular aging influences tissue integrity. Tissue decline alters organ performance. Organ stress feeds back into cellular damage through inflammation and metabolic strain. Slow aging in humans reflects a system designed to buffer these feedback loops. Repair pathways, stress responses, and regulatory controls remain active longer than in most animals. Yet each layer introduces friction. The more the body compensates, the more energy it consumes. The more it repairs, the more byproducts accumulate. This creates a gradual tightening of limits. Aggressive cell replacement increases cancer risk. Conservative replacement slows aging but limits renewal. Humans evolve toward caution. Our bodies favor stability over rapid regeneration. This choice supports long-term function but restricts recovery in later life. Wounds heal more slowly. Damage lingers. Slow aging is maintained by restraint, not abundance. Understanding aging across these levels reveals why it resists simple solutions. No single mechanism fails. Many systems gradually approach their thresholds. Aging slows because these thresholds are distant. It continues because they are unavoidable. The human body extends the journey by managing decline rather than denying it. Slow aging is therefore not a pause. It is a controlled descent. Each biological level contributes its own delay and its own limit. Together, they produce a lifespan that is long enough for memory, learning, and continuity, but not long enough to escape entropy. The human body does not wear out suddenly. It wears out carefully. At the deepest level, slow aging is constrained by a fundamental tension. the balance between repair and risk. Every system that preserves the body also carries the potential to destabilize it. Nowhere is this more evident than in the relationship between regeneration and cancer. Cells that divide actively can replace damaged tissue and maintain function. Cells that divide too freely, however, threaten the integrity of the organism as a whole. Evolution did not choose maximal repair. It chose controlled repair. Human aging slowed because cellular activity was restrained, not because it was intensified. This restraint protects against uncontrolled growth, but it also limits renewal. In early life, regeneration is relatively efficient. Stem cells replenish tissues. Damage is corrected quickly. As time passes, these processes are deliberately downregulated. Cells become more cautious. Division slows. This reduces the probability of malignant transformation. It also means that damaged tissues persist longer. Aging advances through this trade-off. The body sacrifices speed of repair to preserve order. The price is gradual decline. The immune system reflects the same compromise. A vigilant immune response can eliminate abnormal cells before they proliferate. Yet chronic vigilance produces inflammation, which damages healthy tissue over time. Humans evolved immune systems capable of long-term surveillance, not perpetual activation. Immune responses are moderated, shaped by memory and tolerance. This moderation slows catastrophic failure, but allows low-level damage to accumulate. Aging emerges from this accumulation. It is not the result of neglect. It is the result of restraint. Hormonal regulation further illustrates the limit. Hormones that stimulate growth and regeneration early in life decline with age. This decline reduces cancer risk and metabolic strain. It also weakens repair capacity. Muscles lose mass. Bones lose density. The body shifts from expansion to preservation. Slow aging reflects the timing of this shift. Humans delay it longer than most animals. But once it begins, it progresses steadily. There is no safe way to reverse it completely. Attempts to maintain youthful regenerative activity indefinitely would destabilize the system. From an evolutionary perspective, this balance is rational. Selection favors survival to and through reproduction, and in humans, beyond it, it does not favor endless maintenance. The body is designed to last long enough for accumulated knowledge to matter, not to persist without limit. Slow aging is calibrated to this goal. It extends function across decades, but it does not aim for permanence. Importantly, the constraints are interconnected. Enhancing repair increases cancer risk. Suppressing cancer accelerates aging. Boosting immune activity increases inflammation. Reducing inflammation weakens defense. Human aging unfolds within this corridor. This perspective clarifies why aging is not a disease to be cured in a simple sense. It is a consequence of systems designed to protect complexity over time. Slowing aging further would require redefining these protections. It would involve altering trade-offs that evolved to preserve order in a fragile organism. Nature has already pushed these trade-offs far in humans. Compared to other animals, we age slowly because our bodies prioritize stability, coordination, and memory. We age at all because stability has limits. Entropy cannot be negotiated away. It can only be managed. Human aging is the record of that management. It reflects millions of small decisions made by evolution, each favoring balance over excess. To grow old slowly is not to escape decay. It is to navigate it carefully, preserving function long enough for life to be more than survival. From a purely biological perspective, a short, efficient life can appear superior. Grow quickly, reproduce early, decline rapidly, and exit before prolonged deterioration begins. Many species follow this path successfully. Humans did not. Instead, human evolution accepted a different outcome: a long life that includes visible decline. This choice was not driven by comfort or optimism. It emerged from the way value was distributed across time in the human lineage. Survival was no longer measured only by reproductive success, but by sustained contribution. In early human environments, living longer did not mean living better. It meant living with limitation. Bodies weakened, senses dulled, pain accumulated. Yet these extended lives persisted because they remained useful. The presence of decline did not cancel value. It reshaped it. Humans did not evolve to preserve peak condition. They evolved to preserve continuity. A short life preserves intensity. A long life preserves memory. For humans, memory mattered more. The decision was implicit, not conscious. Individuals who survived longer, even with declining bodies, increased the survival of others by transmitting knowledge. This advantage outweighed the cost of prolonged maintenance. Decline became acceptable because usefulness did not vanish with strength. Experience could compensate for physical loss. This compensation is rare in nature. It depends on learning that accumulates over time rather than resetting each generation. Human evolution favored the accumulation. Aging, therefore, became a process rather than an endpoint. It unfolded gradually, allowing contribution to persist across different stages. Early adulthood emphasized physical output. Middle adulthood emphasized coordination and production. Later life emphasized memory, judgment, and social stabilization. Each phase carried diminishing physical capacity, but increasing informational value. This structure made slow aging viable even when decline was inevitable. Importantly, this strategy required tolerance for imperfection. A body that ages slowly carries visible signs of wear, joints stiffen, reaction times slow, cognitive processing changes. These are not errors to be eliminated. They are signals that time has been extended beyond peak performance. Evolution accepted these costs because eliminating them would require faster decline or earlier death. Humans did not optimize for a flawless body. They optimized for a lasting one. This distinction explains why human aging includes long periods of partial capacity rather than abrupt failure. Decline is stretched out to preserve presence. Being present, even imperfectly, matters in a species where learning and coordination persist across generations. The alternative would be a sharp cutoff, high performance, followed by disappearance. That pattern would erase accumulated knowledge repeatedly. Human evolution resisted that erasure. It allowed bodies to linger. This lingering was not gentle. It involved vulnerability and dependence, but it kept experience accessible. It also reinforced social bonds. Caring for aging individuals strengthened group cohesion and reciprocity. Decline became a shared condition rather than an individual failure. From this perspective, slow aging is not a flaw to be corrected. It is a compromise that allowed humans to exist as a continuous lineage of memory rather than a series of isolated peaks. The human body was shaped to endure incompletely rather than vanish efficiently. This endurance gave time meaning beyond reproduction. It allowed lives to overlap, lessons to persist, and mistakes to be remembered. Humans accepted aging because the alternative was forgetting. And forgetting, in a species built on learning, was the greater risk. As aging unfolds gradually, it reshapes not only the body, but the role an individual occupies within a human group. In species with fast life histories, roles are brief and tightly bound to physical capacity. Once strength or speed declines, participation ends. Humans developed a different pattern. Because aging is slow, decline does not remove an individual from usefulness all at once. Instead, it shifts the kind of value they provide. This shift is central to understanding why gradual aging persisted despite its costs. In early adulthood, human contribution is largely physical. Strength, endurance, and rapid response matter. Hunting, gathering, building, and defense depend on bodily performance. The body still repairs efficiently, and decline remains hidden beneath growth and maintenance. As time passes, physical output stabilizes. Small losses begin to appear. Strength recovers more slowly. Injuries linger. Yet this does not coincide with reduced importance. Instead, experience accumulates. Skills become more refined. Decisions become less impulsive. Individuals move from executing tasks to coordinating them. Middle adulthood becomes the core of human productivity, not because bodies are strongest, but because judgment is most reliable. Slow aging preserves this phase. It allows individuals to remain capable long enough for experience to compound. As decline becomes more visible, roles adjust again. Later life emphasizes memory, pattern recognition, and social regulation. Physical limitations increase dependence, but informational value peaks. An older individual may no longer hunt effectively, but they can recall migration routes, past conflicts, and environmental changes. Their contribution shifts from action to guidance. This redistribution of value would be impossible if aging were rapid. A fast decline would eliminate the transitional stages. Humans retained them. Importantly, this role shifting reduced the selective pressure against aging bodies. Decline did not equate to irrelevance. It changed the form of participation. Groups that accommodated this shift gained stability. Knowledge persisted. Social norms were reinforced. Younger members benefited from accumulated experience without bearing its costs immediately. This interdependence made slow aging advantageous at the group level. It also reshaped expectations. Human societies began to anticipate long lives. Time horizons extended. Planning assumed continuity. This expectation fed back into behavior. Individuals invested in relationships and skills that paid off over decades rather than months. Slow aging supported these investments by preserving presence. Even when decline limited physical output, social presence remained meaningful. Aging bodies occupied space in communal life, reinforcing identity and continuity. This pattern did not eliminate hardship. Later life involved pain, limitation, and vulnerability. But these conditions were integrated into social life rather than excluded from it. Care became a reciprocal process. Those who had depended on others in youth received support again in age. This symmetry reinforced cooperation across generations. Aging slowed because it fit a social system that could absorb gradual decline. From a biological standpoint, this system reduced the penalty of aging. Selection pressures softened. Bodies that aged slowly were not discarded prematurely. They were supported long enough for their remaining value to be realized. This does not imply intentional design. It reflects feedback between biology and social structure. As human groups learned to accommodate decline, bodies that declined slowly became more viable. Over time, this alignment stabilized. The human life course stretched into a sequence of overlapping roles rather than a single peak. Aging became a transition rather than a collapse. Understanding this shift clarifies why humans tolerate gradual loss rather than avoiding it. Slow aging allows contribution to fade rather than disappear. It preserves continuity across time. In a species defined by learning and coordination, this continuity mattered more than maintaining peak performance. Decline was accepted because it did not end participation. It transformed it. Once gradual decline became socially tolerated, it began to feed back into human biology and behavior across generations. Aging was no longer treated as a failure to be avoided at all costs. It became an expected phase of life. This expectation altered how humans allocated effort, energy, and risk. When individuals anticipate a long presence within a group, their strategies change. They invest less in immediate dominance and more in durability. This behavioral shift aligned naturally with slow biological aging. Bodies that preserved function over time matched minds that planned for the long term. Over generations, this alignment reinforced itself. Individuals who survived longer could afford to be cautious. Risk-taking that yields short-term gains but threatens long-term survival became less adaptive. Human behavior gradually favored restraint. Energy was conserved. Injuries were avoided when possible. Social conflict was moderated through norms and negotiation. These behaviors reduced external mortality and further revealed the benefits of slow aging. Biology and behavior entered a feedback loop. As slow aging became more visible, behaviors that protected it spread. This loop did not require conscious foresight. It emerged from repeated survival advantages. Another consequence was the stabilization of life stages. When decline is gradual and expected, societies can structure roles around it. Childhood, maturity, and old age become distinct phases with different expectations. This structuring reduces stress on the body. Individuals are not required to perform peak physical tasks indefinitely. They transition instead of collapsing. This reduces physiological strain and allows maintenance systems to operate longer. Slow aging is supported not only by cellular repair, but by behavioral pacing. Humans learned, implicitly, how to live in a way that matched their biology. Reproduction timing also shifted. Humans spread reproductive effort across longer spans, rather than concentrating it early. This reduced the physiological burden of reproduction and allowed recovery. It also synchronized reproduction with social readiness rather than biological urgency alone. Slow aging supported this flexibility. Bodies that remained functional longer could reproduce without exhausting themselves quickly. This further reinforced delayed decline. Importantly, the acceptance of decline reshaped emotional regulation. Human psychology evolved to tolerate imperfection and loss. Expectations adjusted. Aging individuals were not removed from social identity. They remained visible. This visibility reduced the pressure to maintain youthful performance indefinitely. Chronic stress, a known accelerator of aging, may have been mitigated by this acceptance. A body allowed to slow down gradually experiences less strain than one forced to sustain peak output until failure. Cultural attitudes thus fed back into physiological aging. Over long timescales, these small adjustments accumulated. Slow aging became not only a biological trait, but a lifestyle pattern embedded in human existence. The body adapted to a rhythm of effort and recovery that unfolded across decades. This rhythm reduced catastrophic breakdowns. Decline was distributed, not concentrated. Humans did not escape aging. They learned how to inhabit it. This habitation stabilized slow aging across generations. The human body and human behavior co-evolved around the assumption of time. Life was no longer a brief opportunity to reproduce and disappear. It became a prolonged process of participation, adjustment, and transmission. Aging slowed because survival strategies extended beyond the moment. Decline was integrated rather than resisted blindly. This integration made slow aging sustainable. It also made it unavoidable. Once time became central to human existence, the body had to carry that time. Wear accumulated, limits approached. Slow aging preserved function long enough for meaning to persist. It did not promise comfort, it promised continuity. Humans grew old slowly because they learned to live as if tomorrow mattered, and living that way reshaped the body itself. In the modern world, the conditions that once revealed slow aging have shifted dramatically. For most of human history, environmental change moved slowly compared to a human lifespan. Climate patterns repeated. Social structures evolved gradually. Knowledge accumulated across generations without being rapidly invalidated. Under these conditions, slow aging aligned with the pace of life. Experience gained in one decade remained relevant in the next. Today, This alignment has weakened. The human body still ages slowly, but the environment no longer waits. Technology, social organization, and information now change faster than biological adaptation can follow. This mismatch introduces a new tension into the human life course. Slow aging evolved to preserve accumulated knowledge, but when knowledge expires quickly, the advantage of long-lived memory diminishes. Skills learned early can become obsolete. Social roles shift abruptly. The body remains capable, but its stored experience may lose value faster than before. This does not negate the benefits of slow aging. It complicates them. Individuals now live long enough to experience multiple cultural epochs within a single lifetime. This is historically unusual. The pace of external change challenges the original function of slow aging, which assumed relative stability. As a result, aging in modern environments can feel disorienting rather than cumulative. From a biological perspective, nothing fundamental has changed. Cellular repair still slows decline. Maintenance systems still prioritize balance. The body remains calibrated for decades of gradual change. What has changed is the meaning of those decades. A long middle phase once allowed skills to deepen and memory to compound. Now it often requires repeated reinvention. This repeated adaptation places new demands on cognitive and emotional systems. Stress increases. Chronic uncertainty strains maintenance mechanisms. Slow aging persists, but it operates under pressure. Another consequence of rapid change is the altered relationship between physical decline and social participation. In traditional settings, gradual decline was buffered by stable roles. Today, roles are less predictable. Physical limitations may intersect with technological barriers rather than being accommodated socially. This can accelerate functional loss even when biological aging remains slow. The body may be capable, but the environment may not adapt to it. This creates the impression that aging has sped up, when in fact the body is unchanged. It is the context that has accelerated. Modern medicine further complicates this picture. External mortality has been reduced to unprecedented levels. Many individuals now live long enough for slow aging to express itself fully. Chronic conditions become visible. Degenerative changes accumulate. These were once rare outcomes. Now they are common. Slow aging reveals its limits more clearly when life is extended beyond historical norms. The result is not failure, but exposure. The body shows what it was always designed to do: endure for a long time, then decline gradually. Modern conditions simply extend the observation window. Importantly, the mismatch between biological time and cultural time does not eliminate the value of slow aging. It shifts it. Long-lived individuals now serve less as repositories of fixed knowledge and more as stabilizers amid change. Memory still matters, but adaptability becomes equally important. Slow aging provides the temporal space for adaptation, but it does not guarantee it. The human body offers time. How that time is used depends on the environment. This reveals a final constraint. Evolution shaped slow aging for a world that changed slowly. Humans now inhabit a world that changes quickly. The body has not caught up, and likely never will. Aging remains slow, but relevance must be continuously renegotiated. This tension defines modern aging. The human lifespan stretches across accelerating change. Slow aging endures as a biological rhythm, even as the tempo of life outpaces it. Understanding this mismatch helps explain why aging today feels different from aging in the past. The body is doing what it always did. The world is not. Modern medicine has altered the landscape in which slow aging unfolds. It did not change the fundamental biology of aging, but it reshaped how far that biology is allowed to express itself. By reducing death from infection, injury, and acute illness, medicine extended survival well beyond what earlier environments permitted. As a result, The human capacity for slow aging is now revealed more fully than at any point in history. Bodies that once would have exited life earlier now continue into prolonged phases of decline. This extension does not create new aging processes, it exposes existing ones. Slow aging becomes more visible, not because it is stronger, but because life is longer. One of the most significant effects of medical intervention is the separation of lifespan from health span. Humans can now remain alive even as biological systems lose coordination. Organs are supported externally. Functions are substituted or stabilized artificially. This allows survival to continue despite internal deterioration. Slow aging, which once preserved functional participation, now coexists with extended periods of limitation. This was not part of the original evolutionary context. The human body evolved to age slowly under conditions where death eventually followed decline relatively closely. Medicine has widened that gap. Technology intensifies this effect. Assistive devices, pharmaceuticals, and monitoring systems reduce the immediate consequences of decline. They allow individuals to function despite reduced capacity. This support preserves autonomy and quality of life, but it also alters the meaning of aging. Decline is no longer a gradual withdrawal from participation. It becomes a managed condition. Slow aging continues biologically, but its social expression is transformed. The body is maintained beyond the point where natural compensation would suffice. This creates new ethical and emotional challenges that evolution did not prepare humans to resolve easily. Another consequence is the increased burden on maintenance systems. Living longer with chronic conditions demands continuous intervention. Over time, this creates complex interactions between treatment and decline. Managing aging becomes an ongoing process rather than a natural transition. Slow aging remains, but it is no longer self-contained. It relies on external scaffolding. This reliance can obscure the original purpose of slow aging, which was to preserve function long enough for experience to matter. Medical extension also affects perception. Aging may feel accelerated because limitations accumulate over extended periods. When life expectancy was shorter, decline occupied a smaller fraction of life. Now it can span decades. This does not mean aging has sped up. It means the observation window has widened. Slow aging reveals its cumulative nature. Each small change becomes noticeable when life continues long enough to register it. Medicine also reshapes expectations. Survival is anticipated. Decline is negotiated rather than accepted. This shifts psychological responses to aging. Resistance replaces accommodation. Stress increases when the body fails to meet extended expectations of functionality. Slow aging becomes framed as insufficient rather than remarkable. This framing affects well-being and behavior, feeding back into physiological processes through stress and adaptation. Importantly, modern medicine did not remove the evolutionary trade-offs discussed earlier. Cancer risk, immune decline, and metabolic imbalance remain. Interventions manage symptoms and delay outcomes, but they do not abolish limits. Slow aging persists within the same constraints. Medicine extends the path. It does not change its slope fundamentally. Understanding this helps clarify a common confusion. Humans are not aging faster today. They are aging longer. The same gradual processes now unfold across expanded timeframes. What once occurred quietly near the end of life now occupies a significant portion of it. This creates the impression of prolonged fragility. It also creates opportunities for continued participation, learning, and adaptation if social structures accommodate them. Slow aging in the modern era is therefore neither a failure nor a triumph. It is a biological rhythm exposed by extended survival. Medicine reveals what evolution built. It gives time back to the body, but it also asks the body to carry that time further than before. The question is no longer whether humans age slowly. It is how society chooses to live with the time that slow aging provides. As slow aging extends across longer lives, it alters not only biology and society, but the inner experience of time itself. Humans who live long enough to witness gradual decline often report that time feels different. Years seem to pass more quickly, yet changes within the body feel slower and more persistent. This paradox emerges from slow aging interacting with extended awareness. The body changes incrementally, but consciousness tracks those changes continuously. Aging becomes something lived with, not something encountered briefly at the end. In earlier human environments, the subjective experience of aging was compressed. Many individuals died before prolonged decline could shape identity. Today, slow aging stretches across decades of awareness. Individuals adapt repeatedly to small losses. Vision dims slightly. Strength recedes gradually. Recovery takes longer. None of these shifts alone defines old age. Together, they reshape daily life. Slow aging turns decline into a sequence of adjustments rather than a single rupture. This demands psychological flexibility. Humans must revise their sense of self multiple times within one lifespan. Memory plays a central role in this experience. Because humans age slowly, memories accumulate across long spans. Earlier versions of the self remain vivid. This continuity intensifies awareness of change. An animal that ages quickly does not carry such long internal comparisons. Humans do. The contrast between past capacity and present limitation becomes part of identity. Slow aging preserves memory long enough for loss to be recognized. This recognition can be painful, but it also grounds meaning. Change is noticed because continuity exists. Another consequence of slow aging is the stretching of anticipation. When decline unfolds slowly, the future remains open for longer. Planning persists even as uncertainty increases. Humans continue to imagine future states of themselves, adjusting expectations gradually. This sustained anticipation can be stabilizing or burdensome. It allows adaptation, but it also prolongs awareness of vulnerability. Aging becomes a prolonged negotiation with time rather than a brief confrontation. Importantly, slow aging supports emotional regulation. Gradual change allows emotional systems to recalibrate. Sudden loss overwhelms. Slow loss can be integrated. Humans evolved psychological mechanisms suited to gradual transitions. Acceptance, reinterpretation, and shifting priorities emerge over time. These mechanisms reduce stress and protect internal balance. Slow aging provides the temporal space for this adaptation. Without it, decline would be psychologically catastrophic. Yet this same gradualness can intensify existential awareness. When life extends long enough, questions of meaning become unavoidable. Survival alone no longer justifies endurance. Humans must find reasons to continue participating despite decline. Slow aging exposes this need. It reveals that longevity without purpose can feel hollow. Evolution did not provide answers to this dilemma. It provided time. Meaning must be constructed within that time. This is a modern challenge layered onto an ancient biology. The subjective experience of slow aging therefore oscillates between gratitude and strain. The body allows continued presence. The mind must decide how to inhabit it. Slow aging does not guarantee satisfaction. It guarantees opportunity. How that opportunity is used depends on cultural narratives, personal relationships, and individual reflection. Humans did not evolve to feel young for long. They evolved to remain aware for long. Awareness magnifies both loss and value. It makes aging a conscious process rather than a silent one. This consciousness is the final consequence of slow aging. The body slows decline to preserve function. The mind slows acceptance to preserve identity. Together, They create a prolonged interior life shaped by change. Aging becomes less about approaching death and more about managing continuity. Slow aging gives humans the space to notice their own becoming and unbecoming. It does not soften decline. And in that visibility, meaning must be actively sustained. To understand the significance of slow aging, it is useful to imagine its absence. If humans aged quickly, the entire structure of human history would collapse into a different shape. Life would be shorter not only in years, but in continuity. Knowledge would fragment, social bonds would weaken, culture would struggle to stabilize. A fast-aging human would resemble other mammals whose lives peak early and end abruptly. In such a world, survival strategies would favor immediacy. Long-term planning would lose its advantage. Skills requiring years of refinement would rarely emerge. The human story, as it is known, would not exist. Without slow aging, childhood itself would have to be shortened. Development would need to accelerate to compensate for limited time. The brain would mature quickly, sacrificing plasticity for speed. Learning would become shallow and rigid. Adaptation would rely more on instinct than reflection. Innovation would stall because experimentation requires time to fail safely. A fast-aging human species would prioritize reproduction over understanding. Culture would reset with each generation, unable to accumulate depth. There would be little incentive to teach what cannot be fully learned before decline begins. Social structures would become narrower. Intergenerational cooperation would weaken because generations would overlap briefly, if at all. Elders, as repositories of memory, would not exist. Authority would derive from strength or immediacy rather than experience. Conflict resolution would be more volatile. Mistakes would be repeated frequently because lessons would not persist. History would not accumulate, it would restart. Tools that require iterative improvement across lifetimes would be unlikely to emerge. Complex systems depend on long chains of refinement. Without slow aging, these chains would break. Each generation would reinvent basic solutions rather than build upon them. The pace of innovation would be slow despite rapid individual lives. Progress requires memory. Slow aging preserves it. Environmental adaptation would also suffer. Humans survive by recognizing long-term patterns. Seasonal shifts, ecological changes, and rare events require observation across decades. Fast-aging humans would lack the temporal span to detect such patterns reliably. Survival would depend more on luck than foresight. Population stability would decline. Groups would be more reactive, less anticipatory. The capacity to shape environments deliberately would be reduced. Even social emotions would be altered. Attachment relies on continuity. Trust builds over time. Long-lived individuals create stable relational networks. Fast-aging humans would form shorter bonds. Cooperation would be harder to sustain. Altruism, which often depends on delayed reciprocity, would lose its foundation. The social fabric would thin. Importantly, this alternative world would not necessarily be harsher. It would be simpler. Life would be intense but brief. Suffering might be concentrated rather than prolonged. Yet the cost would be the disappearance of depth. Human existence would revolve around immediate survival rather than layered meaning. There would be little room for reflection, tradition, or cumulative identity. The human mind, as it exists now, would be unnecessary. Slow aging did not merely extend life. It created the conditions for history. It allowed time to become structured, shared, and remembered. Without it, humans might still exist biologically, but they would not exist historically. The past would not weigh on the present. The future would not be planned for. Life would unfold in short cycles rather than long arcs. Slow aging stretched those arcs. It turned survival into continuity. Understanding this contrast reveals why slow aging is not a side effect. It is a foundation. Human history rests on bodies that endured long enough for meaning to accumulate. Slow aging did more than allow history to exist. It reshaped how humans think, judge, and assign responsibility across time. When lives extend long enough for actions to echo back upon their authors, behavior changes. Consequences are no longer abstract. A decision made in youth can be felt decades later. This continuity between action and outcome is rare in nature. In fast-aging species, feedback loops are short. Behaviors are shaped by immediate results. Humans, aging slowly, developed long feedback loops. These loops favored foresight, restraint, and moral reflection. Responsibility gained temporal depth. The mind adapted to anticipate distant outcomes because the body remained present to experience them. This shift altered human cognition. Planning horizons extended. Humans began to think not only about survival today, but about conditions years ahead. Resources were managed with future scarcity in mind. Territories were defended with an understanding of long-term stability. Children were raised not only to survive, but to inherit a world shaped by prior choices. Without the expectation of continued presence, long-term thinking would collapse into short-term gain. Ethics, in this sense, emerged from time. Moral systems require continuity. Rules only matter if they persist and if those who violate them remain within the community long enough to face consequences. Slow aging allowed norms to stabilize. Trust could accumulate. Reputation became meaningful because individuals endured. A fast-aging population would reset moral memory constantly. Humans did not. Their slow aging preserved identity across decades. This made accountability possible. Actions followed individuals through time, shaping how others responded to them. Responsibility became personal and lasting. This temporal persistence also shaped empathy. Humans could recognize themselves in others across time. The elderly were not strangers. They were future selves. This recognition softened social boundaries. Care for the aged was not purely altruistic. It was anticipatory. By supporting those in decline, individuals reinforced a system they themselves would one day depend on. Slow aging created symmetry between generations. This symmetry stabilized cooperation and reduced purely exploitative behavior. The mind learned to value continuity over immediate advantage. Cognitive biases adapted accordingly. Humans became sensitive to loss, not only immediate loss, but gradual erosion. This sensitivity supported conservation, tradition, and caution. It also introduced anxiety. Long-lived awareness magnifies worry. The same capacity that allows foresight also allows rumination. Slow aging sharpened the human sense of time's passage. It made the future both visible and uncertain. This duality shaped human thought profoundly. Philosophical reflection emerged not as leisure, but as a response to extended awareness. When life is long, questions persist. Meaning cannot be deferred indefinitely. Slow aging forced humans to confront purpose within time, rather than escaping into immediacy. This confrontation influenced social organization. Laws, customs, and institutions emerged to manage long-term coexistence. They regulated behavior across generations, not just within moments. These structures relied on memory and expectation. Both depend on slow aging. A population that ages quickly cannot sustain institutions that outlast individual lives meaningfully. Humans could, because individuals remained present long enough to see institutions work, fail, and adapt. This feedback refined governance and cooperation. Importantly, slow aging did not make humans wiser automatically. It made wisdom possible. Time alone does not guarantee insight, but without time, insight cannot accumulate. The human mind evolved to fill extended lifespans with interpretation, judgment, and evaluation. Aging slowly provided the temporal canvas on which moral and cognitive complexity could be painted. Remove that canvas, and human thought would flatten. In this way, slow aging shaped not only bodies and societies, but the structure of human consciousness itself. It turned life into a sequence of accountable moments rather than a rush toward reproduction. Thought became layered. Responsibility became durable. The human mind learned to live with time because the body allowed time to be lived. Slow aging made depth possible, but it also made weight unavoidable. When life extends long enough for memory to accumulate, experience does not simply add value. It adds burden. The same continuity that allows learning and responsibility also allows regret, loss, and unresolved meaning to persist. In fast-aging species, psychological load is limited by time. In humans, aging slowly stretches awareness across decades. Memory does not reset, it compounds. This accumulation introduces a distinct mental cost. Humans carry not only what they have learned, but what they have lost. Relationships end. Capacities diminish. Identities shift. Slow aging preserves the mind long enough for these changes to be noticed and remembered. The past remains present. This persistence shapes emotional life profoundly. Regret becomes possible only when there is time to reflect on alternative paths. Grief deepens when attachment spans decades. Fear intensifies when decline is anticipated rather than sudden. Slow aging turns life into a layered narrative rather than a sequence of isolated moments. Narratives require coherence. When coherence is threatened by decline, distress emerges. Humans must reconcile who they were with who they are becoming. This reconciliation is not automatic. It demands psychological work. Cultural systems often provide frameworks for this work, but the tension remains. Slow aging exposes individuals to prolonged identity adjustment. The self must be revised repeatedly as abilities change. This revision can foster wisdom or erode stability, depending on support and meaning. Another mental cost arises from extended foresight. The same long feedback loops that enable responsibility also enable chronic anticipation. Humans can imagine future loss long before it arrives. This anticipation can motivate care, but it can also generate anxiety. Living long enough to foresee decline creates a continuous background of uncertainty. Aging slowly does not compress fear into a single moment. It distributes it. This distribution can be manageable, but it can also be exhausting. Mental resilience becomes as important as physical maintenance. Slow aging thus shifts the challenge of survival inward. The body endures. The mind must make sense of endurance. Social comparison intensifies this burden. In long-lived societies, individuals measure themselves against their past selves and against peers aging at different rates. Disparities become visible. Decline feels personal, even when it is universal. Slow aging makes variation noticeable. Some age more gracefully, some struggle. This visibility can strain self-worth. Fast-aging organisms do not face such prolonged comparison. Humans do. Cultural narratives attempt to manage this strain by assigning value to age, wisdom, or endurance. These narratives help, but they cannot erase biological reality. Slow aging ensures that decline is experienced, not bypassed. It is a consequence of awareness. Humans evolved not only to live longer, but to remain conscious across that span. Consciousness magnifies experience. It does not filter out discomfort automatically. Aging slowly allows meaning to deepen, but it also allows pain to linger. Evolution did not eliminate this cost because the benefits of continuity outweighed it at the group level. Individuals bore the psychological weight so that collective knowledge could persist. In this sense, Slow, aging, redistributed burden from the group to the individual. The mind carries what the body preserves. Understanding this cost reframes aging. It is not only a physical process, but a cognitive and emotional one. The strain of long awareness is part of the design. Humans were never meant to drift through time unconsciously. They were meant to notice. Slow aging gives time for noticing to occur. It also gives time for suffering to unfold. This duality defines the human condition. To age slowly is to live with memory long enough for it to matter. It is also to live with memory long enough for it to hurt. The human story balances on this edge. Depth and burden arise together. Slow aging made humans capable of history, morality, and meaning. It also made them vulnerable to reflection. That vulnerability is not incidental. It is the price of remaining present long after survival has been secured. After tracing the biological, social, and psychological consequences of slow aging, the central question returns with greater clarity. What, exactly, do humans gain by growing old so slowly? The answer is not longevity itself. Many species live long lives. What distinguishes humans is how time is used. Slow aging transforms time into a medium for accumulation rather than mere survival. It allows learning to deepen, relationships to mature, and responsibility to extend beyond immediate outcomes. These gains are subtle. They are not measured in years, but in continuity. Humans gain the ability to carry meaning forward. The extended human lifespan supports layered lives. Individuals do not exist as a single version of themselves. They change, adapt, and reinterpret their roles across decades. This layering stabilizes societies. It creates overlap between generations, allowing knowledge, norms, and values to persist. Without slow aging, each generation would be forced to start again. Progress would stall. Mistakes would repeat. Slow aging gives time for correction. Errors can be recognized, remembered, and avoided. This capacity is fragile. It depends on memory and sustained presence. Humans gain resilience not by avoiding failure, but by surviving it long enough to learn. Another gain lies in cooperation. Slow aging extends the window during which reciprocal relationships can form. Trust requires time. Obligations unfold across years. In short-lived species, cooperation is limited to immediate exchange. Humans developed delayed reciprocity. Help given today may be repaid years later. This system works only when individuals remain present long enough for balance to emerge. Slow aging makes long-term cooperation viable. It supports complex social networks that extend beyond kin. These networks buffer risk and distribute resources, reinforcing survival. Slow aging also supports ethical depth. Moral systems rely on memory and accountability. Actions matter when they are remembered, and when individuals remain within the social system long enough to face consequences. Slow aging preserves identity across time. It allows responsibility to attach to persons rather than moments. This continuity underpins law, custom, and trust. Without it, ethics would be unstable. Humans gain a sense of self that persists. This persistence enables reflection. Individuals can evaluate their lives, revise their choices, and adjust their values. Such self-assessment is rare in species with short lives. Slow aging gives humans the time to change their minds. This flexibility supports adaptation not only to the environment, but to internal understanding. Meaning becomes dynamic rather than fixed. Importantly, these gains are not guaranteed. Slow aging provides opportunity, not outcome. Time can be wasted as easily as it can be invested. Memory can burden as well as guide. Continuity can entrench error as well as correct it. The human advantage lies not in time itself, but in the possibility of using time well. Evolution did not ensure wisdom, it ensured duration. Whether duration becomes depth depends on social structure, culture, and individual engagement. This distinction matters when considering the future. The conditions that once made slow aging advantageous may not persist unchanged. Rapid environmental change, technological disruption, and shifting social norms challenge the original function of extended lifespans. Humans may retain the biology of slow aging while losing some of its benefits. The question then becomes not whether slow aging is useful, but under what conditions it remains so. Understanding what humans gained historically prepares us to evaluate what may be lost or transformed. Slow aging built the human world. Whether it continues to do so depends on how time is lived within that world. The value of growing old slowly has never been automatic. It has always depended on what is carried forward. In the modern context, many of the advantages historically associated with slow aging are under strain. The biology remains, but the conditions that once allowed its benefits to unfold are changing unevenly. Time is still extended, yet its structure has become unstable. Knowledge no longer accumulates predictably. Skills expire faster. Social roles dissolve and reform repeatedly. Under these conditions, the value of long-lived experience becomes ambiguous. Slow aging offers duration, but duration alone no longer guarantees relevance. This does not mean slow aging has lost its value. It means that its returns are no longer automatic. One of the first pressures appears in learning. Historically, slow aging allowed individuals to refine skills over decades, deepening mastery. Today, many skills are rendered obsolete within years. The brain remains capable of long-term learning, but the environment rewards rapid adaptation over deep accumulation. Experience still matters, but its form has shifted. Instead of storing stable knowledge, individuals must cultivate flexibility. Slow aging provides the time to adapt repeatedly, yet repeated adaptation carries cognitive and emotional cost. The benefit of duration is now balanced against the fatigue of constant change. Social continuity faces similar strain. Extended lifespans once ensured overlap between generations with shared reference points. Today, generational experiences diverge sharply. Cultural memory fragments. Older individuals may remain present biologically, yet feel socially displaced. Their experience is not erased, but its applicability narrows. This weakens one of the original advantages of slow aging. The body remains capable of contribution, but the social system may not know how to integrate it. Cooperation persists, but it becomes more transactional, less cumulative. Ethical continuity is also challenged. Responsibility across time relies on stable norms. When norms shift rapidly, accountability blurs. Actions taken under one moral framework may be judged under another. Slow aging extends exposure to these shifts. Individuals must renegotiate values multiple times within a single life. This renegotiation can deepen reflection, but it can also erode certainty. The extended self becomes fragmented. Identity stretches across incompatible contexts. Slow aging intensifies this fragmentation by keeping individuals present through transitions that would once have separated generations. Another pressure arises from inequality. Health, education, and social support determine whether extended life becomes an opportunity or a burden. In earlier environments, survival differences were smaller once adulthood was reached. Today, disparities widen across long lifespans. Some individuals experience slow aging as prolonged vitality. Others experience it as extended vulnerability. The biology is shared, but its outcomes diverge. This divergence complicates the collective value of slow aging. What once stabilized groups may now amplify differences within them. Yet slow aging also retains latent potential. Extended time allows for late-life learning, reorientation, and contribution in new forms. The human brain remains adaptable longer than commonly assumed. Meaning can be reconstructed. Relationships can be redefined. Slow aging provides the temporal space for reinvention as well as accumulation. The challenge lies in aligning social structures with this capacity. Without such alignment, extended life risks becoming prolonged disengagement rather than sustained participation. The question is not whether humans should age slowly. That question is already answered by biology. The question is whether modern systems can translate slow aging into continued value. History shows that slow aging was advantageous when time was structured, shared, and meaningful. When time becomes fragmented, its benefits thin. Understanding this shift clarifies what is at stake. Slow aging is neither obsolete nor guaranteed to remain beneficial. It is a capacity whose value depends on how time is organized. The future of slow aging will be decided not by biology, but by whether societies can create conditions in which extended lives remain integrated rather than isolated. Time has been given. What remains uncertain is how it will be held. If slow aging is to remain meaningful in the future, time itself must be restructured rather than merely extended. Biology has already done its part. The human body continues to age slowly, offering decades of potential participation. What is uncertain is whether human systems can convert that potential into value. History suggests that slow aging becomes advantageous only when life is organized to absorb it. When extended time lacks continuity, its benefits dissolve into duration without direction. The future of slow aging therefore depends less on medicine and more on how societies choose to distribute purpose across long lives. One possible path lies in redefining contribution. If value remains tied narrowly to speed, novelty, or peak performance, slow aging will appear increasingly misaligned. Bodies designed for gradual change will struggle in environments optimized for constant acceleration. Alternatively, if contribution is understood as layered rather than concentrated, extended lifespans can regain coherence. Learning, mentorship, and synthesis are forms of value that require time. Slow aging supports these roles naturally. The question is whether modern systems are willing to recognize them. Another requirement is temporal pacing. Human biology assumes periods of accumulation, stability, and transition. When life is organized as a continuous emergency, maintenance systems are strained. Stress accelerates decline. Slow aging functions best when effort and recovery alternate predictably. Creating such rhythms is not a biological problem. It is a structural one. Work patterns, social expectations, and cultural narratives must allow for fluctuation rather than constant escalation. Without this, slow aging becomes a liability rather than a strength. Intergenerational integration is equally important. Slow aging once ensured overlap between generations with shared reference points. Recreating this overlap does not require uniformity. It requires exchange. When knowledge flows in both directions, extended lives remain connected to change rather than displaced by it. Slow aging then becomes a bridge rather than a gap. The body provides the span. Society must provide the crossing. This integration also reduces the psychological burden of extended awareness. When decline is contextualized within continued relevance, loss becomes transition rather than erasure. A further consideration lies in redefining success across the lifespan. If achievement is measured only by early output, slow aging will feel like prolonged decline after relevance has passed. If success is distributed across phases, later life gains legitimacy. Slow aging allows for multiple peaks of contribution rather than a single apex. This multiplicity aligns with human biology, which never concentrates all capacity at once. Recognizing this alignment can restore coherence between body and environment. Importantly, none of these adjustments require reversing technological progress or extending lifespan further. They require aligning cultural time with biological time. Evolution already provided humans with extended presence. It did not provide instructions for how to inhabit it under rapid change. That task remains open. The future of slow aging will be determined by whether humans treat time as a resource to be filled or a structure to be shaped. Shaping time means creating continuity amid change. It means allowing memory to inform adaptation rather than resisting it. It means accepting that value can emerge late, slowly, and unevenly. Slow aging offers the biological capacity for such a life. It does not enforce it. If societies fail to reorganize, slow aging will persist biologically, but lose coherence socially. Extended lives will fragment into disconnected phases. Presence will outlast purpose. If societies succeed, slow aging can regain its original function in a new form. It can support lives that adapt repeatedly without collapsing, that accumulate meaning even as contexts shift. The question is not whether humans will continue to grow old slowly. They will. The question is whether slowness will remain a foundation for continuity or become a mismatch carried by bodies designed for a rhythm the world no longer keeps. As the argument approaches its conclusion, it becomes clear that slow aging is neither an accident nor a simple advantage. It is a condition that shaped the entire architecture of human life. Humans did not merely inherit longer bodies, they inherited longer consequences. Every gain discussed so far, learning, cooperation, memory, responsibility, depends on one underlying fact: humans remain present long enough for outcomes to return. Slow aging keeps individuals within the loop of cause and effect. This loop is the quiet engine of human continuity. Without it, time would fragment into unrelated moments. With it, actions accumulate meaning. In early human history, this loop operated at the scale of survival. A mistake made in one season could be corrected in the next. A successful strategy could be remembered and reused. Slow aging ensured that feedback was not lost. Over time, this feedback expanded beyond survival into culture, ethics, and identity. Humans became creatures who lived inside their own consequences. This is a demanding position. It requires endurance not only of the body, but of awareness. The body must remain functional long enough for learning to matter. The mind must remain open long enough for revision to occur. Slow aging supports both. It delays finality. It keeps options available. This delay is often misunderstood as mere longevity. In reality, it is temporal openness. Humans age slowly so that life does not close too quickly around early choices. This openness allows for change, correction, and reorientation. A fast-aging species has little room to adjust its trajectory. Humans do. That room has been essential. It allowed societies to stabilize without freezing. Traditions could persist while still being modified. Institutions could endure while learning from failure. Individuals could grow into roles rather than being locked into them. Slow aging created the time needed for gradual refinement. Importantly, this refinement is not linear. It involves error. Humans misuse time. They repeat mistakes. They carry unnecessary burdens. Slow aging does not prevent these outcomes. It makes them visible and revisable. Visibility is the key. When life is short, error is final. When life is long, error can be integrated. This capacity for integration has shaped human resilience more than raw strength ever could. Slow aging allowed humans to become learners across the entire lifespan, not just in youth. As the modern world accelerates, this capacity is tested. Rapid change threatens to break the loop between action and outcome. When consequences are delayed or displaced, learning weakens. Slow aging remains, but its function is strained. This tension clarifies what is at stake. The question is no longer why humans age slowly, but whether slow aging can still serve its original role. That role was never to extend life indefinitely. It was to keep humans inside time long enough to learn from it. The approaching conclusion does not resolve this question. It reframes it. Humans grew old slowly because they needed time for continuity to form. Continuity made history possible. It made responsibility durable. It made meaning accumulative rather than fleeting. Slow aging was the biological condition that allowed humans to live with themselves over time. Whether that condition continues to support coherence depends on how time is lived now. The body still provides the duration. What remains uncertain is whether the loop between experience and understanding will remain intact. As long as humans can still learn from what they endure, slow aging retains its purpose. If that loop breaks, slow aging becomes endurance without integration. This distinction leads directly into the final movement of the argument. The closing question is not about biology alone. It is about whether humans will continue to use slow aging to become more coherent beings, or whether they will simply carry time without transforming it. At the level of an individual life, slow aging offers something quieter than achievement and less dramatic than survival. It offers time to remain present within one's own unfolding. A human life that ages slowly is not simply extended, it is stretched in a way that allows internal revision. Early choices are not sealed immediately. Mistakes do not define the entire arc. Capacities change, but identity is not frozen at a single moment. Slow aging gives the individual the rare opportunity to live long enough to reconsider themselves. This opportunity is subtle. It does not guarantee growth. It permits it. In a fast-aging life, the self must be fixed quickly. There is little room for transformation. In a slow-aging life, the self remains negotiable. This negotiability shapes how humans relate to their own past. Because aging is gradual, earlier versions of the self remain accessible. Memory connects youth, maturity, and decline into a continuous narrative. This continuity can be painful, but it is also stabilizing. It allows individuals to understand themselves as processes rather than states. Life becomes something that unfolds rather than something that happens once. Slow aging preserves this unfolding by preventing abrupt closure. Another gift of slow aging is temporal depth. Individuals can observe long patterns in their own behavior. Repeated tendencies become visible. Values are tested over time. What seemed important in one decade may fade in another. This comparison is only possible when life lasts long enough for contrast to emerge. Slow aging provides that contrast. It creates distance between impulses and outcomes. This distance enables reflection. Reflection, in turn, enables choice. Humans can alter direction not because they are wiser by default, but because they remain present long enough to notice consequences. Slow aging also alters how individuals experience limitation. Decline arrives gradually, allowing adaptation. Skills are replaced. Priorities shift. Identity is reconfigured. This process is rarely comfortable, but it is manageable. Sudden loss overwhelms. Gradual loss can be integrated. Slow aging supports integration by spacing change across time. The individual is given intervals to adjust expectations and redefine purpose. This pacing protects psychological coherence. It allows life to remain intelligible even as capacities change. Importantly, slow aging does not remove finitude. Death remains inevitable. What slow aging changes is the relationship to finitude. When decline unfolds slowly, endings are anticipated rather than sudden. This anticipation can generate anxiety, but it also allows preparation. Relationships can be repaired, meanings can be clarified, unfinished elements can be addressed. Slow aging provides the temporal margin for such closure. It does not ensure peace. It makes peace possible. At the same time, slow aging introduces responsibility. Extended time requires active engagement. Meaning does not accumulate automatically. A long life can drift as easily as it can deepen. Slow aging gives the individual the burden of choice repeatedly. There is time to act, but also time to postpone. This tension defines human freedom. The individual must decide how to inhabit the time provided. Evolution did not solve this problem. It handed it over. From this perspective, slow aging is not simply a benefit granted to humans. It is a condition that demands response. The individual life is given duration not to be filled passively, but to be shaped. The body slows decline so that awareness can remain engaged. What that awareness does with its span is not predetermined. Slow aging offers continuity. It offers the chance to remain in dialogue with one's own life. This dialogue is the quiet core of the human experience. It unfolds across years rather than moments. It depends on memory, patience, and endurance. Slow aging keeps the conversation open long enough for it to matter. Slow aging offers time, but it does not dictate how that time is used. This final tension defines its meaning. A long life can become a space for growth, or it can become an extended delay. Aging slowly makes both outcomes possible. If the time provided is not engaged with, its value collapses into mere duration. The body continues. The mind remains present. But continuity without reflection becomes stagnation. In this case, slow aging reveals its most fragile aspect. It depends not only on biology, but on participation. Without engagement, the advantages of slow aging evaporate. This is not a moral failure. It is a structural risk. Evolution provided time because time made learning possible. It did not ensure that learning would occur. When individuals repeat the same patterns without revision, extended life amplifies those patterns rather than correcting them. Habits harden, regret accumulates, memory becomes weight rather than guide. Slow aging does not protect against this outcome. It exposes it. The longer one remains present without adjustment, the more visible misalignment becomes. This visibility can provoke change, but it can also provoke withdrawal. The difference lies in whether time is treated as an open process or a fixed identity. Slow aging allows identity to remain fluid, but fluidity requires willingness to revise. If revision is resisted, time becomes an enemy rather than a resource. Another consequence of unused time is disconnection. Extended life without integration weakens the link between generations. Experience remains private rather than shared. Knowledge dies silently even while bodies persist. This undermines one of the original group-level benefits of slow aging, transmission. When individuals do not translate experience into guidance or care, continuity breaks. Aging slowly then becomes an isolated experience rather than a connective one. The body remains, but the bridge to others erodes. At the individual level, this isolation intensifies the psychological burden discussed earlier. Memory accumulates without resolution. Anticipation persists without direction. Decline feels meaningless rather than transitional. Slow aging magnifies this emptiness because it prolongs awareness. A short life may end before such emptiness fully emerges. This confrontation is the final demand slow aging makes of a human mind. Circumstances constrain choice. Health, social support, and opportunity shape how time can be used. Some individuals are given time without tools. Others are given tools without time. The question is not whether people fail to use slow aging wisely, but whether systems allow them to do so. At the same time, slow aging retains its core promise even under imperfect conditions. The promise is not success. It is revisability. As long as awareness persists, adjustment remains possible. A slow aging life does not close quickly. It leaves doors ajar. Meaning can be renegotiated late. Survival preserves function. Slow aging preserves possibility. The final implication is this. Humans grow old slowly, not to guarantee fulfillment, but to keep fulfillment from being decided too early. Life remains unfinished for a long time. This unfinished quality is not a flaw. It is the point. Slow aging keeps the human story from resolving too quickly. It allows individuals and societies to remain in process. Whether that process deepens or dissipates depends on how time is inhabited. Slow aging does not answer the question of meaning. It creates the conditions under which the question can be asked repeatedly. And as long as the question can still be asked, the value of growing old slowly has not been exhausted. At the end of this long inquiry, the shape of the answer becomes clear without closing itself. Humans grow old slowly, not because life is meant to be long, but because life is meant to remain unfinished. Slow aging is the biological condition that keeps endings from arriving too early. Across evolution, this openness allowed learning to accumulate, cooperation to stabilize, and responsibility to stretch across time. Across an individual life, it allows revision, reorientation, and late understanding. Slow aging did not promise strength without loss. It promised time with consequences. This promise shaped the human world. The slow pace of decline made continuity possible. It allowed past actions to return, not immediately, but meaningfully. It allowed identity to persist long enough to be questioned. In this way, slow aging is not about extending youth. It is about delaying closure. Human life was shaped to avoid being decided too quickly. The body resists rapid collapse so that awareness can remain engaged. This resistance is imperfect. Decline still arrives. Pain still accumulates. Memory still burdens as much as it guides. Yet these costs were accepted because the alternative was finality without reflection. A short life resolves itself quickly. A slow-aging life remains open to interpretation. This openness created history. It created morality. It created the possibility that a life could be understood only after much of it had already passed. From the earliest tools to modern institutions, human achievements depended on this temporal slack. Without it, correction would have been impossible. Mistakes would have ended stories rather than shaping them. Slow aging allowed errors to become lessons rather than conclusions. It turned survival into a dialogue across time. That dialogue was never guaranteed to be gentle. It required endurance. It required living with the awareness of decline, but it also allowed meaning to form gradually, unevenly, and sometimes late. This is the central trade-off of slow aging. Humans were given time not to perfect life, but to revisit it, to reconsider values, to adjust direction, to carry unfinished questions rather than resolved answers. In the modern world, this trade-off is under strain. Time has been extended further than ever, while coherence has become harder to maintain. Slow aging persists biologically, but its original context has changed. The body still delays closure. The world often demands speed. This mismatch does not erase the value of slow aging. It clarifies it. The value was never speed, comfort, or longevity for its own sake. The value was continuity. Continuity between action and outcome, between intention and consequence, between one version of the self and another. As long as this continuity can still be inhabited, slow aging retains its meaning. If it cannot, extended life risks becoming duration without integration. The final movement of this argument does not resolve that tension. It places it where it belongs. With the listener, biology has already answered its part. Humans will continue to grow old slowly. The body will continue to resist rapid endings. What remains unanswered is how that resistance will be lived. Whether time will be used to deepen coherence or merely to postpone finality, slow aging does not decide this outcome. Humans grow old slowly so that life is not concluded before it can be understood. Whether that understanding ever arrives is not guaranteed. but the space for it remains. That space is the inheritance of slow aging. Seen from this final distance, slow aging no longer appears as a biological curiosity. It appears as a structural choice written into the human condition, not a conscious choice, but a persistent alignment between body, time, and meaning. Humans did not evolve to finish life quickly. They evolved to remain available to it. Slow aging keeps individuals present long enough for patterns to reveal themselves. It allows repetition to be noticed, consequences to accumulate, and understanding to emerge gradually. This does not guarantee clarity. It guarantees exposure. Life remains open to inspection long after its initial direction has been set. This exposure is demanding. It asks humans to live with unfinished narratives rather than tidy conclusions. In many species, life resolves itself through reproduction and disappearance. The story continues even after peak capacity has passed. It keeps the individual inside their own history, unable to escape it quickly, but also not forced to conclude it prematurely. This prolonged presence is the quiet engine of reflection. Reflection requires time not only to think, but to witness outcomes. Humans grow old slowly, so that actions can be seen from more than one position. Youth acts, maturity evaluates, later life contextualizes. Each phase depends on the previous one remaining accessible in memory. Without slow aging, these internal dialogues would be truncated. Identity would be fixed early, or dissolved entirely. Slow aging preserves the dialogue. It allows the self to be revised rather than replaced. At the collective level, the same principle holds. Societies benefit from members who remember past failures and partial successes, not to preserve them unchanged, but to prevent constant reinvention of the same errors. Slow aging allows experience to remain embodied rather than abstract. The human world relies on living continuity. Written records and technology extend memory, but they cannot replace the stabilizing presence of those who have lived through transitions. Slow aging supports that presence. It keeps human systems anchored in lived time rather than theoretical progress. This anchoring does not resist change. It moderates it. It provides friction against collapse. Importantly, slow aging does not imply reverence for age or nostalgia for the past. It implies patience. Patience with processes that unfold unevenly. Patience with understanding that arrives late. Patience with identities that require revision. Human aging slowed because patience became adaptive. Not passive patience, but endurance paired with attention. The body learned to last long enough for attention to matter. The mind learned to notice because the body remained. This pairing is fragile. It depends on environments that allow presence to be meaningful. When presence is reduced to survival without participation, slow aging loses coherence. When participation is demanded without allowance for decline, slow aging becomes a burden. The balance is narrow. Evolution maintained it imperfectly. Modern life strains it further. Yet the underlying capacity remains. Humans still age slowly. The body still delays closure. This delay is an invitation rather than a command. It invites engagement, revision, and integration. It does not enforce them. The final understanding, then, is quiet. Humans grow old slowly so that life can remain a question rather than an answer. So that meaning is not fixed early, nor denied entirely. So that understanding, if it comes, arrives after experience rather than before it. Slow aging creates the temporal space for such an arrival. It does not promise that it will occur. The human condition rests within that uncertainty. Time is given. Awareness persists. Decline unfolds gradually. Within this span, humans must decide how to live with what is unfinished. Slow aging does not solve this task. It makes the task possible. It keeps the story open long enough for it to be read from the inside. At the very end of this long arc, nothing new needs to be added. What matters now is what remains unresolved. Humans grow old slowly, and that slowness was never designed to deliver a final answer. It was designed to delay one. Slow aging keeps life from collapsing into a single meaning too early. It allows experience to accumulate before judgment hardens. Evolution did not rush humans toward conclusion. It allowed them to remain unfinished. The body resists rapid decline so that awareness can stay present. Presence is the key. As long as humans remain present, life can still be interpreted rather than finalized. This presence is costly. It involves carrying memory long enough for loss to be felt and meaning to be questioned. It involves enduring decline without immediate resolution. Yet this endurance is what makes reflection possible. Without slow aging, life would resolve itself before it could be examined. With slow aging, examination becomes unavoidable. Humans are given time not to perfect themselves, but to notice themselves. Across history, this capacity allowed humans to revise practices, adjust values, and reorient direction. It allowed mistakes to be integrated rather than erased. It allowed identity to change without disappearing. None of this was guaranteed. It was enabled. Slow aging enabled the possibility of coherence across time. Whether coherence was achieved depended on how that time was inhabited. The modern world does not remove this condition. It intensifies it. Lives are longer. Awareness lasts longer. The question of how to live with time becomes more pressing, not less. Slow aging continues to hold the space open. It does not fill it. The body delays closure, but it does not supply meaning. That task remains human. In this sense, slow aging is not a gift in the simple sense. It is a responsibility distributed across decades. Time is extended, and with it, the demand to respond to what time reveals. Humans are allowed to see the consequences of their actions, their values, and their omissions. They are allowed to revise, but also required to confront what has accumulated. Slow aging keeps the ledger open. It does not balance it. The final insight, then, is quiet and incomplete. Humans did not evolve to grow old slowly so that life could be long. They evolved to grow old slowly so that life could remain in question, so that meaning would not be settled too early, so that understanding could emerge after experience rather than before it. This is why slow aging never feels finished, even at the end. It leaves something unresolved. It leaves space. The video does not end with an answer because slow aging itself does not end with one. It ends with awareness still active, even as the body declines. The story remains readable from the inside. What each human does with that readability is not determined by biology. Biology provides the time. The rest is left open. And so the final question is not about lifespan, health, or evolution alone. It is about use. If humans are given decades of gradual change rather than a brief arc of intensity, what are they meant to do with that time while they are still here, still aware, and still unfinished?